Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you on Hump Day, Wednesday. Well, you're listening to us on Thursday. We're recording on Hump Day. Josh and Jell in the house have a jam-packed episode for you. Going to go over some off-season moves. Jell and I are going to give our top 5 best and worst off-seasons in the NFL so far to date, and then we're going to preview and recap a little golf action. Of course, before we do, question of the day today, Jell. I know we're recording on Wednesday, but on Thursday, May 11th, it is National Eat What You Want Day. So I want to know if calories and weight gain didn't exist.
It's usually not a factor, let's be honest. I mean, I just consume and then, of course, gain, but let's...
For the sake of it, what are your top 3 foods if you had a day you would just go absolutely to town on if they didn't count?
The first thing that came to mind when you brought that up was nachos.
Okay.
I mean, like,
yeah,
I can't, like, you know, if it weren't for the sodium intake that leaves me feeling like absolute shit every single time, I could have nachos like every meal. It's, I mean, undefeated, whether it's steak nachos, your traditional beef nachos, no protein nachos, and it's just chips loaded with queso, salsa, sour cream, guac, whatever you want on there. Ahi tuna nachos. I don't know.
I haven't had those.
Ooh, gotta get on that. Like, it'd been
not too popular in Wisconsin.
That's probably, I guess, yeah, more of a dish down south, or I assume if you go to any of the coasts where you got, you know, we've got in Texas, the Gulf of Mexico right here. Obviously, either the coast, you've got the ocean. Yeah, you're a little limited there. Don't see many tuna.
Yeah, can't go to the local dive bar and get tuna taco or tuna nachos. And if they do have it on the menu, I would recommend not getting
probably a pass.
Yes.
But no, I mean, ahi tuna nachos, great. They very, very strong. Yeah, first thing I thought of was an ahi tuna or any sort of nacho. I kind of like a steak, you know, traditional like steak nacho. That'd probably be my normal go-to, but God, if that's an app, you are sitting pretty. After that, I mean, God, I'm just trying to think of anything I could have in any meal, and I just don't really give a shit about how I'm going to feel afterwards.
Yep.
I mean, like, fried chicken tacos are amazing. Pizza, obvious. Like, I mean, you could go unlimited wings and go to town on some of that action. I got wings on my mind because we'll get into that as we get going a little deeper into the episode into tomorrow's episode, I suppose, with some of the spicy foods that we're going to be referencing. But
what about some nice poppers, Joe?
Those were bomb.
They were so good.
Those shrimp stuffed, or was it crab stuffed jalapeno poppers?
Oh.
Deep fried. I don't know if it was worth it, but
no.
although the last time that I went turned out a lot better, so we must have just gotten a bad batch. But anyways, not to get too into the details, the literal down and dirty of it.
Literally.
And then, I mean, there's any number of items for like my lunch / dinner, and then dessert. If I'm going for either a cherry cheesecake or probably the richest thing you can find on any dessert menu, a molten lava cake with ice cream on top.
Nice. My top 3, honorable mention to just going to town on some cheese curds. Give me some good cheese curds, some nice side of homemade ranch. And
see, you always got to go home. Like the restaurant made ranch is always way better than anything you're going to find in a bottle.
Yep,
and it sucks because if you make it yourself at home and make it like restaurant style, all the recipes basically require you to like put in like one egg, and that's going to be enough for like a whole fucking jar. And then they say consume within 3 days. What am I drinking this? Like, what am I? So that's why I've never made homemade ranch.
Right. That's hilarious. My number 3 going to go in the candy realm, and that is Sour Patch Kids. I can go to town on some Sour Patch Kids now, but my stomach will pay for it. So if I can eat whatever I want, not have the repercussions, Sour Patch Kids for days.
Sour Skittles, fan? Not a fan.
Yeah, I'll eat them. I just Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch takes the cake. Yeah, though.
Absolutely.
Easy.
Number 2, you'd mention it in yours, pizza. I just get any pizza. Just go to town.
I can't argue with that one bit.
And number 1, ice cream. Oh boy.
So I took it to
everything.
To another level
meals.
with that.
I went I just went just general foods, but no, I appreciate you letting us know your intake for your meal.
It's all the above.
Love it.
You have a favorite pizza? Like I just like Supreme, like loaded ass Supreme. That's my general go-to.
Yeah, for meat toppings, I like pepperoni the best, but I agree. Supreme is where it's at. Throw as much veggies on there as you want because it gives it so much more flavor. It's amazing. Give me some onions, green pepper, mushroom, black olives, you name it. I'm a fan. We do sometimes homemade flatbreads and we throw some artichoke on there. And,
nice.
So good.
Do you ever do the sun-dried red tomatoes?
Yeah.
On a pizza? That paired that bomb with the artichokes and some spinach. Try that. And maybe even amazing. And dice up some chicken, spinach, artichokes, sun-dried tomatoes, and just an olive oil for your base rather than a sauce. Yep. That's the move, good. Man. That is the money flatbread.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm gonna take a short break, go make one.
All right, adios, YouTube.
It's good episode. Live. Solid.
All right, good pod, and we'll see you guys Friday.
Yes. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, into that search bar, subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop, typically on Tuesday or Wednesday. But if you subscribe, you will know exactly when we go live. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions in there. Otherwise, hit us up on our socials at Dead Arm Sports. Gel can be found at DasGel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Give us a follow on all of those. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot of your written review, and we will swag you up with some Dead Arm Sports goodies. Don't usually do this, Gel, and it has been a while since we have done this, but my wife this last weekend was on a bachelorette trip for one of her friends in Lake Tahoe, and I was getting snaps all weekend of them from different breweries, and she's like, oh, what would you get on the menu? And she's like sending me the menus of like 30 beers that are listed on there, and I'm sitting watching our 2-month-old, and I'm just like, well, I'd take a number 1, 6, 8, whatever. And so little did I know,
number 2, and number 3.
Yes, little did I know she was actually collecting cans to bring back home to me. So I got a bunch of beer from Lake Tahoe, and I want to give a shout out to the Hangar, which is a beer place that is out there. And she had pretty much told the guy what I wanted. They didn't have like their beers on tap in cans at all. They'd kind of collect from all up and down the West Coast. So the guy behind the counter is like, oh, this one. So he like handed her a bunch of different ones. And one of the ones that he gave her to bring home to me is Burning Barrel. It's called Nectar of Dreams. It's a double hazy IPA. Oh, so good.
That sounds amazing.
That's what I'm drinking on camera right now. It's a very, very nice color. Kind of looks like it reminds me of my college days when I'd go to the bar and order a lunchbox. Not sure if you've had one of those.
Yes, of course. So, that might be a Wisconsin special, but
I think so. But yeah, for those of you not out there, it's name your beer that you want in there, throw in a splash of orange juice, some amaretto, and that is your lunchbox.
It's effectively a manmosa.
Yes.
similar to that kind of a deal.
Yes. But I mean, so I wanted to give a shout out to not sure of his name, but if you are listening, thank you, sir. You made my day, and this beer is fantastic.
And shout out to your wife for being amazing and bringing that back. Yes. That is
she's like,
that's good wife material, man.
I was like, what? And she's like, oh, and pulls out like a random 6-pack of beers. Like, awesome.
Hell yeah.
You are the best.
That's phenomenal. That's awesome.
Yes. So haven't given a shout out to the beers we're drinking in a while, but wanted to definitely shout that out and shout out that gentleman. So.
It kind of looked like the colonoscopy liquid that my dad has had to drink beforehand.
Definitely not.
Tastes better, I'm sure, and has a different effect, I hope.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be a one-man episode here, Joe. With that, we are into our off-season rankings. So
that's two references to early in the episode.
Yeah, 11 and a half.
All right, let's wrap. That'll be our last one, hopefully today.
Yes. What we're gonna do for this segment here, the NFL off-season is essentially starting to slow down for the most part. We've had the bulk of free agency, the draft, you name it, trades, and all of that. So we kind of wanted to go through and just kind of recap what we think are the top 5 moves and the bottom 5 moves that were made this offseason, kind of discuss it in detail, see if we agree with the other, and just kind of go from there. So let me start off on a positive note, Jill, since we had some other jokes here that
not so positive.
Yeah. So why don't we kick it off with our top 5 and not going to essentially put them in any sort of order, just initially just our top 5 moves. So no particular order. What is one of your top 5 moves that was made this offseason?
Well, I'm going top 5 teams here.
Okay.
And again, not in any. Well, here, let me. I almost wish I would have waited to the end, but now we're started with this. So let me start with an OLI, and this is a team that I'm not putting in any category, but just more of an off-season question. The Cardinals, are they just tanking at this point? I mean, they held on to DeAndre Hopkins. He'd been looked at as a trade candidate since last season, in season. Do you, I guess, what are your thoughts on them so far not making a move? Do you think they even tried to shop him? There were obviously tons of rumors that he wanted out, and then he never got traded on during draft day, and then came out after the fact and said, created a video saying that he never wanted to be traded. Don't know why he wouldn't want to be traded. Does he want to sit, there with a backup quarterback for at least the first 8 months of the season, or the next 8 months or whatever?
Yeah.
First 8 months of the season. Wow. I mean, do you have any general thoughts on that really quick? And then I'll jump into my number 1 top 5 team.
Yeah. The only thing I can really think of with the Cardinals, I don't know if they're necessarily tanking, because I don't know who's going to really want to take on that Kyler Murray contract.
$19 million. Oh, I'm talking about DeAndre Hopkins. Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, just in general with the Cardinals, like their offseason and everything with that. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense with DeAndre. I mean, that seems like somebody that you would trade away, and maybe they do. Maybe they just didn't get the piece that they wanted to right now. But going with your kind of question on what the Cardinals are doing this offseason, I'm not really sure. And the only thing I could think of is that they're just kind of at this point, like, you know what, our season right now, we're not sure when exactly we're going to have Kyler back. We're probably not going to be making the playoffs this year. Why are we going to be spending a bunch of money, have that on the books? Let's just kind of get some low-key moves in and just kind of do whatever this season. We have Houston's pick now for next year, which is probably going to be a top 10 pick. And we're not going to be good, have another top 10 pick there and just kind of see what happens. I mean, it'll be very interesting if they do have that number 1 overall pick with Caleb Williams coming out next year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think that they would rather have Caleb Williams, but
you send Kyler away for a 3rd, and that's it. I think
you'd have to eat his salary though too. I don't know.
Depending on who you send him to.
Yeah.
There were talks about the Falcons inquiring on Kyler this offseason. Now, maybe they were asking the Cards, hey, what would you send him away for? We'll give you a fourth. And the Cards say, balk the hell out of that because, okay, what if you do trade Kyler for a fourth, even coming off that ACL? I'm fine with them. Like, what I think that's kind of sneaky about this and them hanging on to Kyler, even if they do, let's say they start this season 1-9 and Kyler comes back week 10 and Kyler plays pretty well, that's the only way to salvage his value is if he comes back for the final 5-6 games and plays well and shows that, hey, I came off this ACL with no issue. I'm a legitimate player. And maybe you could get a first for him. But so I guess I get them not shopping him out for a super low value, which I assume the Cardinals were probably lowballing him or lowballing the Cardinals.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be, like you said, it'll be extremely interesting if they do end up with the number 1 pick next year, because I think if you could just turn to Caleb Williams on his rookie deal, you absolutely do that. But it'll be interesting to see if they can get off Kyler.
I think that'd be an easy choice. And if you have to send him away for a third and Kyler in a sixth for a third or a second or a third, and then you got Caleb sitting right there on a rookie deal. That's huge. And somehow I don't know what the money would look like in that contract, maybe you soak up half of the money that's left for Kyler, something like that, and get some additional draft capital. But let's turn back over to the positive side of the NFL. And one of my favorite off seasons was the Carolina Panthers. Kind of feels like low-hanging fruit here because they had the number 1 overall pick. But I like some of their other moves that they made. Obviously, Bryce Young, number 1 overall. I thought he was the clear-cut number 1 pick here, given that every quarterback that's in this draft has question marks. What do we know about? I mean, is CJ Stroud Dwayne Haskins, or what is his ceiling? We have no idea. Anthony Richardson, raw as hell. Will Levis, obviously he ends up falling to the second round. Bryce Young is the most sure thing in this draft. I thought that was the easy number 1 pick, so I love that. The other pieces that they added, Von Bell, safety, really has had a really good career with the Bengals so far. They needed to shore up some of that secondary, so I love that. Andy Dalton to back up Bryce in case shit hits the fan. He's and just have a veteran presence in that QB room. That's generally a smart move. Getting Bryce Young a couple of additional weapons. Adam Thielen, yes, he's on the back 9 right now, but he's still been productive. And then adding DJ Chark as well. I like those moves. Also adding Hayden Hurst. Yeah, he hasn't been extremely productive, but in the past, or at least recently, but in the past, been a nice performing tight end. And then Miles Sanders as well in that running back room. And also grabbing wide receiver Jonathan Mingo out of, I believe, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
That's correct.
Yep.
In believe in the second or third. And then grabbing edge rusher DJ Johnson as well. So they help shore up pretty much every need that they had. And I really like what the Panthers have done. I think that they, given that division, if Bryce can play, which I think he's going to be their starter day 1, I'm not going to be shocked if they go from that number 1 overall pick to competing for a division title.
Yeah, no, they had an interesting offseason to say the least with that. And it all culminates around what is the career of Bryce Young at this point, because Adam Thielen's not going to last the contract of Bryce Young. DJ Chark's probably not going to last the contract of Bryce Young. So what exactly do they have in him? And I mean, that was one of my questions for the offseason too with the Carolina Panthers is, did they give up too much to move up for Bryce Young? Because we didn't have that surefire quarterback in this class. And yes, he is the most surefire of all of these quarterbacks. But again, they gave up quite a bit to get him and traded away a solid receiver in DJ Moore too. So
But what are your other options there if you're Carolina? I mean, you can't roll into the season again with question marks at quarterback for the last
I give them
5 years. I mean, basically since Cam left, I don't know,
and I give them credit for doing that because there's going to be
swing for the fences.
Yeah, because there's going to be some other teams when we get to the bottom area. I'm going to give them crap for not addressing the quarterback position and doing all of that. So no, I agree completely with that. And one of my top 5, I just kind of went like actual moves. So it's kind of cool. We'll have moves and then you'll have the team. So we'll kind of have a bunch of different things covered. But one of my top 5 is the reverse side of this. I love the Bears trade back to number 9 for that number 1 pick. Ended up collecting the second round pick this year, first round pick next year, 2025 second, and the huge piece in DJ Moore, finally getting that number 1 receiver, which we haven't really fully seen him unlock his potential. But again, you just mentioned all of the quarterbacks that he's had throwing him the ball, or lack thereof.
Yes, PJ Walker.
Which, again, Justin Fields
following him to Chicago, by the way.
Yeah, Justin Fields is still a question mark, still young, but I mean, that gives him a huge target to throw the ball to. So I absolutely loved that move by the Bears this offseason. Definitely think that was one of the top 5.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to back that up right away with them being one of my top 5 teams that had just entire off seasons of being awesome. Obviously, as mentioned, the DJ Moore trade that turned into also, by moving back, getting DJ Moore and also still being able to get one of the offensive tackles that they were obviously targeting in
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. I wrote down Darnell Draft. That's obviously wrong.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Swish. Darnell Wright. 4th round pick, Roschon Johnson, one of my sleeper running backs that, a guy that I said, hey, keep an eye on. Grabbing him in the 4th, I think that's a great pick to add some depth and potentially, you'd have that 1-2 combo in the backfield with him and Khalil Herbert. Noah Sewell, 5th round. I know I mentioned him previously as well, saying that this guy came, when he came into Oregon, he was looked at as one of the higher end prospects in the nation. And to be able to grab a tackling machine that you hope that he's a tackling machine as late as they did in the 5th round. Awesome. Also adding Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, a couple more tackling machines. Obviously the Bears love their linebackers. So those 2 guys are going to fit in great. Travis Homer. Yes, not anything special, but running back depth, you can never have enough of it. And when he came in for Seattle, when they had their injury issues, he had some productive games. So I like that. Obviously, PJ Walker is mentioned.
Forget Donta Foreman too.
I'm not done.
Oh, all right.
PJ Walker coming over. Robert Tonyan stealing him from the Packers, although I think the Packers were kind of done with him. He had a pretty rough last year, but good pickup. 2nd tight end to compliment Cole Kmet. And then, yes, as mentioned, Deonta Foreman. So that running back room is pretty loud, but, as I know that you fell a little bit more in love with Darnell Wright after the pick, can you go a little bit more into that? A little bit discuss Darnell Wright, his strengths and everything a little bit more.
Yeah. Honestly, we don't know with Paris Johnson and everything too, if that was the Bears' top lineman off the board because he went earlier to Arizona. So at this point in time, they had to pick pretty much between Darnell Wright, Broderick Jones, and Peter Skoronski from Northwestern. And
Skoronski still out? Oh,
yeah, he went 11 to Tennessee. Yep.
Right.
So, and they did a ton of research, obviously, with him being right in their backyard up in Evanston, Illinois. At Northwestern, they were there quite a bit in contact with him. So that was somebody that a lot of experts thought they were going to end up going with, but they ended up going with a guy from Tennessee, Darnell Wright, who is a little bit more raw. He could be the best lineman in this draft, but he could also be a little bit of a bust. Tennessee is an offense that for college rankings is kind of gimmicky. We've seen a lot of their offensive players come out, and especially receivers, quarterbacks, and they don't necessarily pan out a ton in the NFL.
Pretty much outside of Alvin Kamara.
Correct, yeah.
Like, it's been iffy.
Yep. But this is a guy that didn't give up sacks, didn't give up quarterback pressures, solid in the run game. And that's going up against SEC defenders. So that's your premier conference in college football. And Will Anderson said that that was the best lineman that he faced his entire college career. So I'm fine with that. If he's the one protecting Justin Fields, it sounds like Jenkins is going to still be the left tackle. They're going to keep Darnell Wright on the right tackle, his position that he played in college. So they're not going to force him over on the left side or anything like that. So position he's comfortable in, he can come in, play day one and protect the quarterback. I mean, at this point, that's awesome. I'm glad. Usually the Bears make some really obscure pick, and sometimes that works out. And Kyle Long, that everyone didn't see him as a first round talent and was solid for his time in Chicago. And we'll see if this one ends up working out. But yeah, I was thrilled with that pick.
Almost unconventionally, I think that the right tackle position might be more important for Justin Fields than the left tackle spot, given that so far in his career, when his vision has been clouded a little bit, he hasn't been able to see the windows and everything. And the right side, that's the side that's going to be in front of him. So if Darnell Wright can hold off some of those pass rushers from that side, the left tackle is obviously extremely necessary for guys that are more pocket passers because they're not able to evade the sack coming from their blind side. But Fields is amongst the top 3 most mobile quarterbacks in the league. So if you can clear up his field space and his field vision, and so that he can see every open throw downfield, I think that might be even more important than protecting his blind side, because he can feel that blind side. He might be able to feel that blind side edge rusher coming and be able to, do the classic Russell Wilson spin move out of it and then just roll to his left. So yeah, I think that securing that right tackle position is extremely key. I love that move.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with that O-line. And I think one of my favorite signings this offseason was Orlando Brown Jr. going to Cincinnati. It was a 4-year, $64 million deal, $31 million guaranteed, which I think is fine. He's one of the better left tackles in the league coming over from the Chiefs. Obviously, he's been protecting Patrick Mahomes since he came over from the Ravens via trade a couple seasons back. And Cincinnati, we've harped on that pretty much since our podcast started, that they needed to give Joe Burrow protection. And what better way to do that with one of the best left tackles out there and by far the best O-line free agent this offseason. So they get their huge piece there to protect Joe Burrow, and he'll help them obviously immensely in that passing game and keep Joe Burrow on his feet.
Yeah. And I think that's obviously a great move. Beyond that, they haven't really made any moves in terms of extensions of Joe Burrow. I think that they're still sitting there probably mulling, okay, if Burrow's going to take a $250 over 5 years, what can we afford to do? We're going to obviously extend Jamar Chase. What do we do with T. Higgins? What do we do with Joe Mixon? So they haven't made many moves outside of that Orlando Brown signing, but that was an absolute money signing. Again, big money contract. So you got to wonder the fate of some of these other high-end. There are other offensive players that are all due for extensions, but they did have the money to make that Orlando Brown contract because they lost both of their safeties, as previously mentioned, Von Bell, and then their other starting safety, both gone. So, yeah, I think they allocated their resources properly. Joe Burrow's already had one torn ACL, and he is your franchise. So you have to do whatever you can to protect him. And I think they made the right move paying that major money for Orlando Brown. Another top 5 team for me that I thought had a great offseason. And this is, God, I feel like I'm almost kind of cheating here. I've already got the number 1 overall pick, and now I'm going to go to the number 2 overall pick, the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
I really liked their offseason. They obviously that number 2 and number 3 overall pick getting what I think like pre-draft, before all the stupid draft rumors of, oh, well, Will Levis end up going number one, all that bullshit, like pre-draft lying season, CJ Stroud was looked at as the number one or number two quarterback in this draft, and they take him at number two. Will Anderson, again, before lying season, when everyone's saying, hey, Will Anderson could fall, we don't know about his upside. He ends up going number three. Like, they got their franchise quarterback, or what they hope will be their franchise quarterback. They got an edge rusher, and while he may not be a Nick Bosa type, he's still gonna be good for nine sacks a year, number of TFLs, and just also setting the culture there in Houston, which I think is a huge deal for that Texans team. Him and D'Amico Ryans, I think they're going to be, like that's exactly the kind of player that D'Amico Ryans wants. So I thought getting those two guys at first and at number two, number three overall, great. I don't know what they had to give up to move back up to three. A little steep, but again, if you look at that trade, like you're moving up to three to take CJ Stroud and get your franchise quarterback, it's not an outrageous amount of capital that they gave up. So I'm cool with that. And then they made a bunch of, kind of B minus level moves in this offseason, signing Robert Woods, Jimmy Ward, DB, Chase Winovich, edge rusher, Noah Brown, wide receiver, Shaq Mason traded from the Bucks for to add a guard on that offensive line. They signed Laramie Tunsil to a big extension, signing Devin Singletary. So a lot of like B level, B grade moves there, but overall like solid. And if you look at the rest of that, if you look at that division outside of the Jags, which sounds so weird to say, like the Jags are the big threat, right? But really, if you look at that division outside of the Jags, it's pretty putrid. I mean, you've got a rookie quarterback there in Anthony Richardson, or it's going to be Gardner Minshew. And then you've got a combination of Tannehill and Will Levis in Tennessee.
Mayo Man?
So I don't know. I mean, the Texans, I'm not saying they're going to be anything feisty this year to, compete for a conference championship game or anything like that. But you add all these B-level players that are on these 1-year prove it deals. That's the kind of stuff that you need, or that often motivate these players. And then getting what you think is going to be a franchise quarterback. And I guess Will Anderson, basically kind of like a franchise defensive changer and a culture changer on the defensive side of the ball, plus the hiring of D'Amico Ryans. I thought he was the top candidate that was available. He'd played in Houston, so he knows the ownership. He knows all the facilities. He knows all the key players, all the key pieces in that franchise. So cannot forget about the addition of D'Amico Ryans, and especially after having that turnstile that they've had over at that head coach position with the previous 3 years, 3 separate head coaches. I think D'Amico Ryans is there to stay. I love that Texans offseason.
Yeah, I really like a lot of the moves that they made. The only question I have is I'm just wondering how much CJ Stroud's going to be able to develop with that receiving core that he has. You look at what he had at Ohio State with Marvin Harrison, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft next year. Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, granted, he didn't have him most of this last year, and then you look at what he has right now. And yeah, they drafted Tank Dell, speedy guy out of Houston, not the Texans, but the Houston Cougars, the Cougs. But Robert Woods, who we haven't seen anything from him since his days in LA. Nico Collins, which, there's a little bit of hype from him out of college, but not a ton. John Mechie should hopefully be back this year. So maybe that is a little bit. I forgot about
Mechie.
Yeah. So maybe that's a little bit of a.
But he's also coming off that major injury.
Yeah. I would agree. Cancer. Did he have cancer?
Maybe
I think that's what he was out for last year, but
okay, just major medical issue.
And again, I mean, it's a rookie quarterback. So even if he had the top receiver in the NFL, if he had Justin Jefferson there, he's still going to be limited, needs to learn the offense and everything, but it's just hard it just adds something extra when you don't have that necessarily go-to receiver to throw the ball to as well.
Well, I think we'll be able to see probably pretty quickly was CJ Stroud a final product of, or due to the coaching staff, the scheme, the weapons, versus was it actually Stroud that was awesome and was hitting everybody in stride because he's that awesome. So I think we'll probably be able to see pretty quick on that.
Yeah. I mean, we're still waiting for an Ohio State quarterback to prove it in the NFL. I mean, again, Justin Fields is probably as close as we've had. Which, again,
insane.
Yeah. I mean, because they have a quarterback every year that's in the Heisman voting pretty much. But
does Quinn Ewers count if he does he count? He was there for a year as a red shirt.
Joe Burrow would count.
Yeah, good point. I don't think Burrow counts either.
As much
he
as
lost that job to Dwayne Haskins. Now, in Ryan Day's defense, Dwayne Haskins, or maybe that was still Urban.
Yeah,
Dwayne Haskins was an awesome college quarterback.
Yeah. Yep. I have a question for you, Joe. You went to an NFL game in the Pacific Northwest, and what was that crowd chanting during the game?
Gino, Gino, Gino.
That was one of my top 5 moves of this offseason, is that he re-signs with Seattle, 3 years, $75 million, but they can essentially get out of it after the first year. Thought it was an absolutely phenomenal contract. He showed that he was able to lead that offense last year and what Pete Carroll wanted him to do. They almost made the playoffs they did. They made the playoffs.
Yeah,
right?
they were a wild card.
They snuck in. Yep. Okay. To remember, it was crazy that last day between them and then Detroit, Green Bay. But no, so it takes them to the playoffs, has a solid receiving core there. And like I said, Seattle can get out of his contract pretty much at any time after this year. So I love the front loaded contract of it. Thought it was an absolutely great signing for both him and the Seahawks. Only question is I was kind of surprised that they didn't try and draft anyone this year. But again, as far as moves go, I think this was a solid move for Seattle.
I guess but who would you think that they should go after? I know in previous episodes, I thought, shit, dude, Max Duggan sliding to the 7th. You couldn't have taken a flyer on him somewhere before. I would have loved that in Seattle, but after Anthony Richardson was gone to the Colts, who else is out there like that you would have?
I mean, I still would have liked to see them take somebody. I mean, throw Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jaron Hall. I mean,
Jaron Hall would have been sweet there too.
Yeah, somebody, especially it's Gino's job. You're paying him all that money. You're not putting the rookie in, but you could have somebody at least sit there and just see what you have. Because if Gino does the same thing that he did this year, I mean, unless you're expecting him and confident with him rolling out for the 3 years, and then once that gets done, then maybe you have a down year where you just kind of sign a journeyman for your quarterback and hopefully get a top pick in the draft.
Which that's what Gino was supposed to be.
Yeah.
As a journeyman and hoping you get a top pick.
Yeah, but I don't know, because I don't foresee Seattle having a top pick to get one of the top quarterbacks next year. I mean, maybe they roll the dice and grab somebody a little bit later on in the draft and do what I thought they should have done this year. But I think at that point in time, when you don't have that 10-year quarterback, you should draft somebody every year, just in case. Why not?
I was going to say the exact same thing. It's worth drafting somebody every year just in case. And I mean, we saw the Patriots do this multiple times. They drafted, even when Tom Brady was still dominant, they still drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. They still drafted Jacoby Brissett, and both those guys played for the Patriots. So I think it's worth
still in the league,
and they're both still in the league. And one of them is pegged as a starter. I mean, I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's worth doing, even if it is a late round pick. Maybe you end up running into a Brock Purdy, and to think Seattle didn't see Brock Purdy do that in their own division, where the Niners were like, hey, let's just grab some guy for some depth. And turns out he's the best quarterback on that roster, like at least was last year. So I agree. That was a pretty big head scratcher, but in general, ding, ding, ding. I have them in my top 5 for overall teams. As you mentioned, Geno on that high money for 1 year, but after this year, that is a cuttable contract. So overall, you're soaking up a lot of the cap this year, but who are you paying big money to right now? DK and Jamal Adams, and then it's Geno. So you can afford to have a real high dollar cap hit this year for something that's team friendly beyond this season. So it is ultimately cuttable. It's team friendly. I'd say it's Geno friendly as well, because he's getting like 70 million guaranteed. So he's going to about double his career earnings, at least, if I would think probably more than double his career earnings over these next 2 years. So it's cuttable. It's team friendly. It's Geno friendly. Absolutely love the move. And I mean, what are you going to do? You knew Geno was coming back. So I thought that was just an absolute money trade. Yes. Two other signings, Jaron Reed, a nose tackle coming over from Green Bay. He was productive in Green Bay. He made a lot of tackles, good run stuffer, not a huge, nose tackle. You're not asking for him to be a pass rusher, but, he'll be a nice nose tackle next to Shelby Miller. And then also the reunion of Bobby Wagner coming back to Seattle after his 1 year stint in LA. I think he's like, look, Seattle's my home. Pete Carroll's my dog. I'm ready to come back. And Seattle obviously had a way better year than the Rams. So
the grass wasn't greener on the other side.
It's not always greener. It's not always greener. And then obviously their top two picks, Devin Witherspoon, corner out of Illinois at 5. Perfect Pete Carroll guy. Fits just attitude-wise, culture-wise, fits exactly what he wants. And then to be able to get the top wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, at 20, where I don't think anybody thought that there was a shot that he was going to fall that far. No. I mean, we were thinking he was going to go hover around that 11 to 14-ish spot. And to be able to grab him at 20, that's freaking sweet. So you add him to DK, Tyler Lockett. Eventually Lockett's, you're going to have to move off of Lockett at some point, but just because he's been in the league for a while, taking a lot of beatings, especially not only as a receiver, but also as a kick returner. We haven't seen, and last year Lockett wasn't the same as he'd been in the previous 2 to 3 years. So you'd imagine Smith-Njigba comes in as the slot receiver this year, or as the outside if they're doing a 3 wide receiver set. And you could have all 3 of those weapons on the field at the same time for Geno, who needs his weapons. I can't believe how hard they killed it in the first round, and with that Geno contract. So that's why they're in my top 5 teams.
Yeah, no, I love their offseason. That literally the only thing I didn't like was, like I said, the not drafting a quarterback at all. And then Zach Charbonnet at round 2. I thought that they could have even went Hendon Hooker there. Hendon Hooker would have been solid in Seattle too, but I don't know. I just didn't really understand the Zach Charbonnet pick, which again, Seattle, that's their basis is the run game, and Kenneth Walker did get hurt for a couple games last year, so they might complement each other well, but I just think they could have done something a little bit different in that second round. I'm going to throw it over to also a team from the NFC West that ended up trading away a player, and that was Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins. So I really like that move that Miami made. Jalen Ramsey, one of the top corners in the league. Miami is in win now mode, and you trade Jalen Ramsey or you get Jalen Ramsey and all you traded away was a third and tight end Hunter Long. Like, yeah, you got to pay Ramsey, which is fine, but they're a team right now that is set up to win. And I really like them going out there and getting Jalen Ramsey to compete in that AFC East. So I really like what the Dolphins did there. I don't think that the price tag was that steep for him. So I'm totally comfortable with that. And then getting one of the top corners in the league.
Yeah, I'll get more into this as we get into the bottom 5 regarding the Rams.
Oh yeah. But yeah, this was a Miami.
This is a Miami win for sure. No, I mean, grabbing Jalen Ramsey for a third rounder, they're obviously in win now mode, and they have to be, given that there is no guaranteed longevity with Tua.
No,
so
unfortunately,
I mean, Tyreek Hill, he's already said that once his contract is up in 2025, he's going to retire. I don't know if I buy that, because if somebody comes to him and says, hey, we'll give you 3 years, 90 million, that's a little hard to turn down. But he said that, but at that point, he'll be on another team possibly. So they're in win now mode. Xavier Howard on the other side. You've got those two dominant corners. Absolutely love that. Plus and there's also been rumors about them possibly going after Delvin Cook to solidify that running back room. Feels kind of late for that to happen, given that we're past the draft, but you never know what happens here. They've spent a lot of short-term money on the offensive line. I think to only give up a third for Jalen Ramsey, who, yeah, he had a bit rough of a year last year in LA, but when you get a motivated Jalen Ramsey, that's when you get the best Jalen Ramsey. So, which is the case with a lot of corners. I mean, who wants to be a shutdown corner on an absolute dog shit team? It's hard to fire yourself up to go 100, especially when you're facing the number ones on the other team, and put your body on the line to know that, yeah, we're gonna end up going 4-15 or 4-13 anyways. So I thought that's a great move. You're gonna get a motivated Jalen Ramsey, who might also be playing for his next extension or his next contract as well. So great move by the Dolphins. All right, my final top 5 team, I'm going to go with Philly. I thought they had a really nice off season. Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect out of Philly, given that they had so many guys that looked like they were going to lose, that were due up for free agency. And I mean, they ended up not losing a ton of guys. James Bradbury was due to be a free agent. He got an extension. Boston Scott, as mentioned for like the 4th time over the past few weeks. We said 1 year, $2.5 million, I think was our prediction. 1 year, $2 million. Perfect. Thank you, Boston Scott. Come on back. Rashad Penny, 1 year, $1.35 million. When he's on the field, he's productive. So they obviously lose Miles Sanders there, but they add Rashad Penny. They bring Boston Scott back. Kenny Gainwell's still there. So that's a nice, like, 3-headed trio. We'll see and they added DeAndre Swift. I don't know how I forgot how I spaced on that, but the addition of DeAndre Swift. So that backfield is sweet. Jason Kelce came back after there were rumors about him retiring. They also were able to hang on to Brandon Graham. Darius Slay was thought of, as a guy that they have to let go because of cap reasons. I don't know how they afforded this, but they gave him a 2-year, $42 million deal. So $21 million, that's about the going rate now for top corners. And for him to stick around, you got to love that. And then obviously going hard with Georgia players in the draft with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo.
Yeah, no, I mean, they killed it this offseason, which they have been the last couple of years with the draft, free agent moves. And obviously that's shown. They were a wild card team the prior year and it ended up in the Super Bowl this year. So they know what they're doing in that front office. They can find pieces that fit their scheme. We'll see what happens. Again, we mentioned this, I think, last week or the week before with them losing both their coordinators. So have to replace those. But I don't know. I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon in that division. I mean, you got the Giants, Washington still trying to figure it out right now. Cowboys, if they can get their shit together for a full season. So
we've been waiting for that since their 1998 NFC Championship run.
Exactly. My last top move, as much as I hate to say it, I really like what the Packers got in return for Aaron Rodgers. Swap first, sent a 5th-round pick, got 2nd-round pick this year, 6th-round pick this year, and then more than likely a 1st-round pick from the Jets. So I thought that was more than probably what they were going to get, especially with them not really having a ton of leverage in the situation. So I thought that was a pretty solid move.
Yeah, and just to follow up really quick, I had them kind of on like an outside looking in. The Jets actually as an outside looking in because you weren't going to go back. Like, it was Aaron Rodgers or bust. They figured out a way to get it done. with all of his friends. And I thought that was just, they just had to make that move. So I just wrote down Jets outside looking in, Aaron Rodgers and friends.
On to our bottom five. We are
let's
in this a bit. So I don't have a ton of them for this one. Carolina was one of my bottom fives with that Bryce Young trade. We talked about it a little bit. Just it was a very steep price tag, I think, that they gave up to get him, which again, they're putting all their eggs in one basket with Bryce Young, which they needed to do. They've been in quarterback purgatory the last few years. So I get it, but just ultimately wonder if that was too much. But that was one of my bottom five.
Yeah. We both talked that we liked what the Bears did there. So you got to hate a little bit on that trade, but of course I'm a fan of them moving up for that Bryce Young spots. Staying in the quarterback room for my bottom five, I'm going to go over to the Tennessee Titans. They made no meaningful signings. There were rumors about Tannehill getting traded. There were rumors about Derrick Henry getting traded. They weren't dealt. I'm okay with their first two picks, I guess. I love the Skoronski pick. Levis, we'll see. I know both of us were down on him, but second round, I think we're fine.
Yeah, I like where they got him there, but I just don't think it's.
But is he going to be the future of that franchise? I guess we'll find out. But if the fact that they made no meaningful signings, they didn't move off of Henry or Tannehill. They've been trying that combo out for the last few years, and they didn't add to that team, and they didn't make any moves to make them better. So they're just sitting in they're just sitting in quicksand. Making no meaningful moves whatsoever. I have to put them in my bottom five.
I feel like we have a general trend here because that's kind of what my bottom five entails here. And my next one up is, we've talked about this a ton, so I don't have to get into it a bunch, but Derek Carr, New Orleans Saints, 4 years, $150 million contract, $100 million guarantee. Love Derek Carr. I'm not an anti-Derek Carr person by any means, but I just don't understand what the Saints are doing. You went from Drew Brees, and I get that. It's hard. You had a Hall of Fame quarterback for a good chunk of the last 2 decades as your starting quarterback and had so much success there, but move on from Sean Payton. You signed Derek Carr, which yes, that's fine. But you're just kind of throwing a Band-Aid at it. It's a better Band-Aid. It's like a Band-Aid brand instead of a knockoff brand from what you've had the last couple of years, but it
Equate.
Yeah, whatever. I don't even know. Up and Up. I think that's a Target brand.
That's a Target.
Hashtag not a sponsor, but no, I didn't get it. I get that they're trying to say, okay, maybe he just needs a change of scenery right now. We've got Chris Olave there. They've got pieces around him, so he should be fine, but that's it. That's fine. I don't think he's going to be a Super Bowl quarterback for you. He's going to be able to compete because the NFC South is dog shit. They should be competing. If they're not, then
but you're sitting there
terrible. But again, you're going to get to the playoffs, and then you're going to lose first round probably and have another mid-round draft pick, and you're just going to keep repeating this process until his contract's up.
Just rinse, or what is it? Wash, rinse,
repeat.
And repeat. That's it. Your upside here is going 9-8, 10-7, winning the division, being the 4th seed, and then losing to the top wild card team. That's the, and then again, then you're stuck there with the 18th pick in the draft again. So yeah, I had them I had the Saints in my bottom five. Derek Carr, Juwan Johnson, minimal production, giving him 2 years, $12 million. We've been waiting for him to be productive. I don't know why he'd be worth giving a contract to more than $2 to $3 million. Jameis Winston got a 1 year, $8 million deal, to be a backup. He didn't even play last year, and Andy Dalton was beating him out. What are we doing? I like the Jamal Williams signing, 3 years, $12 million. That's just dirt cheap for a really productive back that I believe led the NFC in rushing touchdowns last year.
I think it was NFL.
Maybe the entire, so the entire league. And then they signed Jonathan Abram. He's awful. He got cut by the Raiders. Why even bother having him rostered? So that was terrible. Their first round pick, Brian Breesy, defensive tackle. he was originally looked at as the top recruit coming out of high school. Why did he fall so far? He wasn't that like just one of those guys that wasn't that productive at Clemson. And there's a reason he fell. I guess take the risk on the upside, but what is the upside? I mean, if you're the number one recruit coming out of high school, you should be a high end pick. And for him to fall to the bottom of the first round, meh. And then the third round, I like why they took Kendre Miller. But the problem I have is why haven't they moved off Kamara yet? So
I think it's probably because of his legal situation, though. I mean, how are you going to move off of him right now? And
I don't know if his contract is cuttable. You don't want to cut that guy, but can you give him away for a fourth, a fifth? Yeah. I don't know.
Did he even have a rushing touchdown last year? I know there was a stretch for a long time. Good. Horrendous. Which shout out to Tyler. Not sure if he's a listener or not, but he stole Kamara right in front of me in our league of record draft, and I was extremely mad. But hey, I had Nick Chubb, so that worked out.
That worked out great.
Quarterback position again, Gel. You brought the Raiders up, and Jimmy G signing a 3-year, $67.5 million deal, 45 guaranteed. Again, this is just kind of like what are we doing here? I get it. Josh McDaniels is there. He was there when they drafted Jimmy G in New England, so probably a guy that he fought pretty hard for them to draft in case of Tom Brady going down or them getting rid of Tom Brady at some point.
You know, Belichick always wanted to move off Brady for every year for like 5 years.
Yeah. But he doesn't stay healthy, and he's Derek Carr. I mean, it's the same quarterback, except one is way more injury prone. I don't get it. I really don't. You had a pick. Granted, at that point in time, you were looking at Will Levis, and if you weren't comfortable with him, we weren't comfortable with him. I totally get it. So that's fine. Maybe they were looking to possibly address it if an Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud fell or something like that, if things got crazy. But I don't get it.
I think that could be the reason that the Texans also gave up what they had to give up to move up to 3 for Will Anderson, because maybe the Raiders were trying to move up to that 3 spots. That's just a working theory, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, because Anthony Richardson was the next one on the board, and Texans just had to give up what they had to give up. It was a bidding war, and especially if nobody was in love with Levis, which the Raiders clearly weren't if they weren't willing to take him at 7 there. All right, sticking with, let's move off the QB position a little bit, and let me just go over to the Rams. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, if you're going to trade away Jalen Ramsey for a third, why don't you blow the whole damn thing up? You could have sent away Cooper Kupp for a lot of picks. You probably could have gotten something for Cameron Akers. I don't know what Stafford's worth is right now, but if you could have maybe moved off of Stafford. They've got a couple of other old vets that are on that roster. Aaron Donald, you could have, yes, he's getting up there in age, and he's only got 2 years left on his contract, which will probably be his last contract. But why even bother sending away Jalen Ramsey for just a third round? It's like this half rebuild bullshit. That's exactly what it is. It's bullshit. Like you're just making your team a little bit worse, or maybe significantly worse on the defensive side, but with no real direction. I thought that was just a complete mistake. So, and then also taking Stetson Bennett there in the 4th. What are we doing? If Stafford can't play, you're going to roll out Stetson Bennett.
I hope that happens. Oh, I hope it happens.
So I hated that Rams offseason. I thought, again, just like the Saints, it's just time to blow it up. If you're going to send away, either go all in one more year and keep Ramsey on, or blow it up. But if you're going to send him away for a third, you might as well send off all those other pieces too, because you're giving a really weird message to the rest of that team. Is like, are we trying to compete, or are we trying to rebuild? Oh, we're going to send away our top 2 defensive player for a third who might start in 8 games this year. Like, that's just not, I don't get it. I don't understand the direction of the Rams.
Yeah, no, I love that you said a half rebuild because that's exactly what they did. And that only works if your star players are like going into their prime. They're not. Matthew Stafford, back end of his career, only a couple years left. He's been super injury prone. Aaron Donald was talking retirement this time last offseason. So who knows how long he's going to be there
As was
for.
McVay.
McVay was, which I think that's probably the only reason that they're doing this quote unquote half rebuild is because he's still there as their quarterback. Geez, maybe throw him in there. He'd be better than Stetson Bennett.
Probably better than Stetson.
But no, because he's the head coach. But again, you trade away arguably your best player on your team in Jalen Ramsey, which fine, whatever. That's if you need to get him off the books, go for it. But Cooper Kupp, again, solid receiver. This is getting up there a little bit for a wide receiver. He's like in his prime right now, not heading into it. Where you just, I totally agree that you need to either love this quote, shit or get off the pot. And they clearly are just like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to fart or what's going on. Oh, geez, another poop joke here again. Well, it's about time.
We got to get off that
at the hour mark. But I don't
2 an hour, I guess.
2 an hour, yeah. So you're due for one here before we close it out, Joe. But no, I agree completely. I don't know what we're doing there. And love that you brought up the Rams because I'm going to talk about their quarterback that filled in last year, and I don't know what Tampa Bay is doing with Baker Mayfield. I get it. It's 1 year, $8.5 million, whatever. Just throw it at it. But Tampa Bay is another team right now that I'm just like, I don't know necessarily what they're doing. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Yes, they weren't in position really to draft a quarterback this year, but I don't know. Go for Jimmy G, Derek Carr if he's out there. I mean, somebody that maybe could at least do a little bit for you there. You still have a solid wide receiver core in Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. So what are you doing holding on to them right now if you're rolling out Baker Mayfield on a 1-year deal? Like this is another one of what are you doing right now? Yes, I know Tom Brady retired and your world was torn apart and everyone's crying down in Tampa, but like for real, I don't understand Baker Mayfield. Yes, he looked okay at times with the Rams, pulled off
he's not a solution though.
No, he's not at all. He's been, this is his 4th team now, Cleveland, Carolina, LA, and now
this is his 4th team in 2 off seasons.
Yeah.
Well, all 4 of those teams.
Cleveland, he's been in the league for 7 years, maybe.
He did his first 3 in Cleveland, his 4, it hasn't even been that long. He might be in his 5th or maybe this is his 6th. Because his 5th year was when he was traded to the Panthers and the Rams, so he's going into his 6th year. So like 4 teams
just don't
in 2 off seasons. That's a red flag. And when you and I are this hardcore, this bottom 5 is just matching up basically spot on. Yes. It means that you had shitty off seasons. I had the Bucks as my number 2 worst off season. They signed, obviously you mentioned they signed Baker, which means they might win more games than they should if they would have just started Kyle Trask. So you wonder, I mean, obviously Baker's not.
Might get into that tomorrow, Joe.
Like, why aren't they just tanking at this point? But like they don't sign a legitimate quarterback and then they re-sign Levante David. Why? Like, he's just an old linebacker. Why re-sign him? And they didn't trade away any of these players of value. As you mentioned, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you can get legitimate value back. So I thought they had maybe the worst. That like I was teetering on them having the worst offseason. I've got to put one other team on blast, and that's why I'm not. But that was that brutal offseason.
Yeah. Well, I'll kick it
and
back
not
to
and just go tank mode, man. And maybe they still end up only winning 3 games and are in play for one of those top 2 picks. But just fucking embrace it, man. You've got this equity built up. You just won a title. Your fans don't. It's not like you're in Green Bay where the Packers are the only thing that the city of Green Bay has. You're in Tampa where they have Tampa, they have the ocean, they have Florida. They don't really
no taxes
historically care that much about the Bucks. Like, you have equity built up. You don't need to try to win games and go your fans are going to be more pissed if you go 6-11 than if you would have just forfeited the season and just grabbed Caleb. So that's just a complete whiff.
Yeah. No, I'll kick it back to you here quick, Joe, because my last one is just I didn't really know what the Seahawks are doing in that second round drafting Zach Charbonnet. Jacking Zach Charbonnet. I didn't understand.
We've talked about that enough.
Yeah.
It's like that shit made no sense.
Exactly.
My final team, and I've been doing this all off season, worst off season in the league, the New York Giants.
Oh.
Fuck the Daniel Jones, 4 years, $160 million. That alone, I believe that's what the number was, 160. That alone, that contract extension, that could have been enough. That could have been the only thing that I mentioned. It would have put them at number one on this list. But then they also gave Saquon Barkley the franchise tag, and he said he's not gonna sign it. So now you gave the franchise tag, which we said a long time ago. They gave the franchise tag to the wrong guy. They extended the wrong guy. Paris Campbell was their big wide receiver signing. Darren Waller was their big trade that they made. Like, what are we doing weapon-wise? That's Paris Campbell. He's useless. Darren Waller isn't on the field half the time. And then they're draft-wise, Deontay Banks, corner in the first. There's receivers available there. John Michael Schmitz, a center out of Minnesota. I like building that offensive line a little bit, but again, they need receivers. Jalen Hyatt in the third, I'm fine with that, but do I want a deep ball receiver to pair with Daniel Jones?
We just talked to earlier. It's a Tennessee offensive guy, which again, Alvin Kamara.
Sketchy. And he didn't pop until Cedric Tillman went down. Once Cedric Tillman at Tennessee got hurt, that's when Jalen Hyatt popped. So is he just a product of the system? Probably. And then they don't get a backup running back until the fifth round. Eric Gray, who was never anything special. So if Saquon goes down, they're effectively fucked, which historically Saquon does go down. So I thought takes the cake for the number one most horrible offseason in the league. You could have given me the Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley alone, but then to do nothing at wide receiver, grab an injured tight end, don't take any wide receivers early. You grab a system wide receiver in the third, and then you don't do anything to back up Saquon Barkley. And if he doesn't sign that franchise tag and decides to pull a Le'Veon and sits out, and Eric Gray is your number one running back, good luck.
Well, I hope if he does, Saquon lets me know prior to having to add or drop our incoming college players in Dynasty, since I have Eric Gray, and that would help me out.
That would help you out a lot.
Moving back into the winner's circle, Wells Fargo Championship, not quite to the AT&T yet. Wells Fargo Championship, Wyndham Clark gets the W, 19 under par, and he's been someone that's kind of been hanging around the top standings the last few tournaments, been playing some solid golf. I think, honestly, I was thinking about picking him in the Mexico Open, but the week prior when he was at the Zurich, he was on a hot mic and he just said, "Oh, my shoulder just popped during one of his swings." So I'm like, oh, this guy's destined for the injured list here coming up, but ends up solid tournament in the Wells Fargo designated event, big money for him, and congratulations for first dub.
His first career W. Great. I mean, he was really, really awesome in college. Looked like he was kind of like the next shining star. And then it took him a couple of years to really break through, but he's been, like you said, he's been kind of lingering there and for a while now as somebody that can finally break through. And when you're in a field like it was last week, especially with Rory just eating dog shit off the freaking ground.
There's our poop joke, 2 per hour, folks.
Hey, we got it. All right. With him not playing well, really your leaderboard wasn't all that great at the top. I mean, Wyndham Clark, once you got to the back nine on Sunday, it was like, okay, let's just get this tournament over with, which obviously that's not what you want a designated event. Those designated events are supposed to be, you want them to matter because it's for big money and you want all that viewership there. But the last 2 hours on Sunday, it was like, okay, Wyndham Clark's just going to walk away. How many strokes is he going to win by? So that was a little disappointing, but good for him. What was a little bit more disappointing, as previously mentioned, Rory McIlroy being an asshole and finishing even on the day. I'm done with him. I'm over him. I'm over him. I know he's looked at as one of the top golfers in the world and everything, but dude, I am done. After he withdrew, he misses the cut at the Masters, withdraws the next week at RBC. He's the one that's, came up with this designated event deal and, has been kind of the leader on the PGA Tour in thinking of this and like the PIM to get players bonus money at the end of the year. Like, for him to not show up there at the RBC, then the next event he plays and he finishes even. And I don't think he even broke the top 50. Like, fuck off. I'm out. Rory, you're dead to me.
Oh, that is great. So, yeah, our picks, Joe, obviously Rory finished at even par, and Big Dick Vic had a monster first 3 days and then decided he was going to poop his pants and go 6.
Come on, man.
Oh, I ruined it. Dang it. 6 over on Sunday. So still got 1 stroke on you, Joe, and we will get into our picks here momentarily, but going to move on to this week's event. AT&T Byron Nelson played at TPC Craig Ranch down towards your neck of the woods, par 71, 7,400 yards. Defending champion KH Lee going for the trifecta this week. He is a notable in the field along with Jason Day, Terrell Hatton, Harry Higgs, Tom Kim, Matt Kuchar, Hideki Matsuyama, Scotty Scheffler, Adam Scott. So lighter field this week with the PGA Championship just around the corner next weekend. Guys trying to get in their final tune-up, and can imagine some of those guys I just read off, Jill, are our favorites for this week.
Yeah, your top 5 here. Not a shocker. Scotty Scheffler is your very heavy favorite at plus 350. Those are insane odds to get anything above or less than plus 500. Always insane odds, but plus 350 for Scotty Scheffler. Terrell Hatton at plus 1,600. Jason Day right behind him at plus 1,800. Tom Kim plus 2,200. And Hideki Matsuyama rounding out your top 5 at plus 2,500.
Like it. We will get into our picks here. If you're new to the show, welcome in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your favorite listening platform or YouTube. Each week, Jill and I pick a golfer. We started with the Century Tournament of Champions. Whatever that golfer shoots relative to par, that is your score for the week. We're keeping a running total. Once you pick a golfer, cannot use them again, and we cannot pick the same golfer as our opponent for that week. Whoever is in last place gets first pick. Jell is down 7 strokes right now at a whopping 133. Whopping 140 for this guy. So a 7-stroke lead. And Jell, who is your golfer this week?
Well, I'm going with Kim. Not Tom Kim. Not Siwoo Kim. Not Kim Kardashian. But Michael Kim at plus 6,500.
Bang.
2 top 10s in his last six finishes, last 6 outings, no missed cuts within that span. He lives in Texas and reportedly has been practicing at this course quite a bit. He had been eyeing this as a tournament that he hopes to win, that thinks he can win. So last 6 outings, no missed cuts, 2 top 10s, that and living, and practicing this course, that's good enough for me. I'm not expecting him to get a W here, but I think a top 10 is in play, especially with, and I think we got to consider the fact that Jordan Spieth has withdrawn from this tournament.
Yeah, I forget
with that wrist injury. So, that makes this field a little bit more wide open. This is Spieth's like home event, and for him to be out, I think that makes a huge difference. Michael Kim playing nice, and I'm done. After Rory just crapped himself. There we go. I'm gonna go with a little bit lesser of a name here, and Michael Kim's been playing nice, so there we go.
I'm also going to go with a little bit lesser known name this week, and not for this tournament. I'm going to go for the trifecta here, Jill. I thought maybe you'd go that route, so I'm looking at KH Lee this week. It obviously had great success here at TPC Craig Ranch, great success in the ATT. Byron Nelson, expect him to make the cut, and that is what I am wanting right now to keep my lead. Somebody that should be pretty safe. Thought maybe you'd take him. I was happy with either him or Scotty. Haven't used him yet, so I'll save Scotty for a little bit later on. Then use KH Lee. Probably not going to use the rest of the year, so I'll get him out of the way.
Need to make some strokes back.
Well, we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, into the search bar. Subscribe. Click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. Otherwise, hit us up on our socials. We always welcome in any questions, comments, concerns, segment ideas, or anything you have for us at Dead Arm Sports, at DosGel, at DosJPack. Give us a follow on those. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot. We will swag you up with some goodies. What are those platforms, Joe?
Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review on whatever your chosen listening platform is. 5-star review would be super, super duper phenomenal on that chosen listening platform. Also, find us on YouTube. Just search Dead Arm Sports. Subscribe, rate, review there. Hit that bell so that you know whenever we are putting out new content.
Appreciate everyone out there listening. Make sure you tell someone you know about the podcast. If you enjoy it, help us spread the word, get more followers, boost us up those charts. Booster. Close her out, Joe.
Hey, Josh, want to hear a poop joke? Never mind. It's too corny.